There is a jug of milk on your counter right now, and let us say the power has just gone out. Maybe it is a summer storm. Maybe it is the grid again, the way it fails more and more these days. And in the back of your mind, a little clock has already started ticking, because you know that in 4 hours, in 6, if you are lucky, that milk is going to turn warm and sour, and you are going to pour a good gallon of it down the drain. I want to show you something. For less than the cost of that 1 gallon, with a clay pot, a little water, and a cool shaded corner, I keep milk sweet and drinkable for the better part of a week in the heat of August, with no electricity at all. None. Stay with me. My name is Mammi Sarah. I am Amish. I live on a farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, that my husband's grandfather built with his own hands, and I have kept a milk cow for most of my grown life. I raised 8 children and more grandchildren than I can rightly count on the milk from that cow, and I have never in 70 years owned an electric refrigerator. Not one. And on the hottest morning in August, the milk I draw and set aside on Monday is still good and sweet when I pour it over my grandchildren's oatmeal on Friday. I am going to show you exactly how I do it, in the order I do it, with what it costs and where to put it. And then I'm going to tell you the part that should make you a little uneasy, which is that folks have known how to do this for thousands of years, long before there was a wire run to a single house in this country, and somewhere along the way you were taught to forget it because a clay pot does not hum in the corner and does not need replacing every 10 years, and there is no money in a thing that lasts. Let me start with what most folks get wrong, because if you do not understand this one thing, none of the rest will make any sense. You have been taught that milk needs to be cold, ice cold, 38 degrees, right at the edge of freezing, the way your refrigerator holds it. And that is fine. That is one way, but it is not the truth of the thing. Milk does not need to be cold. Milk needs to be cool, and it needs to be still, and it needs to be clean. What turns milk is not warmth exactly. It is the little living things in it waking up and multiplying. And they multiply fastest when the milk is warm and slowest when the milk is cool. You do not have to get milk down near freezing to keep it. You have to get it down into the 50s and hold it there, steady, out of the sun, and keep it clean going in. Get milk into the 50s and keep it there, and it will give you days, not hours. That is the whole secret, and everything I am about to show you is just different ways of doing that one thing without a machine. This is what we have always done. Long before I was a girl, my husband's grandfather built a springhouse down at the bottom of the yard, a little stone building set right over the place where a cold spring comes up out of the ground. The water comes out of that hillside at 52 degrees in January and 52 degrees in July, the same all year, because that is the temperature of the earth down deep where the sun never reaches. He built a stone trough inside and ran that spring water right through it, and my mother-in-law set her crocks of milk and her butter and her cream down in that running water, and it kept them cool as a cellar every day of the year. Not everyone has a spring. I know that. My own mother did not have one. And so my mother used the older way, the way that came across the ocean with our people from the old country, from the German lands and before that from Switzerland, and it is the way I am going to teach you now, because you can do it this weekend, whether you have a spring or a cellar or nothing but a shaded porch and a breeze. It is the clay pot. Here is what you will need, and none of it is dear. You want 2 clay pots, the plain terracotta kind, the reddish-brown flower pots they sell at any garden store or hardware store. The important thing, and I cannot say this strongly enough, is that they must be unglazed, plain, rough, raw clay. Not the shiny painted kind, not the ones with a glaze baked onto them. The whole trick depends on the clay being able to breathe water through itself, and a glaze seals it up tight and ruins the whole business. So, unglazed. You want a large one, a good big pot, and a smaller one that sits down inside it and leaves a gap of about 2 inches all the way around. A few dollars each. Then you want a bag of plain sand, the kind for a child's sandbox or for mixing mortar, $3 or $4. A cork or a flat stone to plug the drainage hole in the bottom of each pot. A clean cloth, plain cotton or muslin, $1 or $2. And a lid, a clay saucer, or a plate to set on top. All told you are under $20, and most of it you buy once and use for the rest of your life. Under $20, and I have used the same 2 pots for 11 summers. Now here is how you build it. You take the large pot and you plug the hole in the bottom with your cork or your stone, and if you want to be sure, a bit of clay or beeswax pressed in around it. You pour a layer of sand in the bottom, an inch or 2, and you set the smaller pot down inside on top of that sand so its rim sits about even with the big pot's rim. Then you fill the gap between the 2 pots with sand all the way around, right up near the top. Now you take a pitcher of water, plain cool water, and you pour it slowly into that sand, all the way around, until the sand is soaked through and will not take any more. You will hear the clay drink it in. Let it sit a few minutes and top it up again, because the dry clay and the dry sand are thirsty the first time. What you have made is a pot inside a pot with a wall of wet sand between them. Into that inner pot goes your milk, and I will tell you exactly how in a moment. Over the top goes a wet cloth, folded a few times, laid right across the opening, and then the saucer on top of that. And the whole thing you set in the shadiest, breeziest spot you have, a north-facing porch, a cellar window where the air moves, never, ever in the sun. The sun is the enemy of the whole thing. Now, the milk itself. Do not pour your milk loose into the clay. The clay is porous, that is the point, and milk would seep and sour into it. Your milk goes into a clean glass jar with a tight lid, or a glazed crock with a cover, and that jar goes down into the inner pot. The clay does the cooling. The glass holds the milk. And here is a thing my mother taught me that makes the difference between 3 days and a whole week, especially in the warm months. Before you ever put the milk away, you scald it. You pour your fresh milk into a heavy pot and you heat it slowly, gently, stirring, until it is steaming and just barely begins to tremble at the edges. Not a hard boil, just to the point where a skin wants to form. Then you take it straight off the heat and you cool it down as fast as you can, setting the pot in a basin of cold well water and stirring it. That gentle scalding settles down the little living things that would otherwise turn the milk, and cooling it quick keeps them settled. My mother scalded every drop of milk that was not going to be drunk that same day, and so do I. It is the oldest dairy trick there is, and it is half of why my milk lasts. So you scald your milk, you cool it, you pour it into your clean covered jar, you set the jar down in the inner clay pot, you lay the wet cloth over the top and the saucer over that, and you tuck the whole thing into the shade where the air moves. And twice a day, morning and evening, you pour a little more water into the sand to keep it soaked, and you wet the cloth again. That is the whole of the work. A minute in the morning, a minute at night. The sand must never be allowed to dry out, because a dry pot does nothing at all. Now let me tell you why this works, because it is a wonderful thing and it is no mystery once you see it. It is the same reason you feel a chill when you climb out of the pond on a breezy day, even in high summer. It is evaporation. When water dries off a surface into the air, it carries heat away with it as it goes. Water cannot turn from wet into vapor without taking a good bit of heat along for the ride. That is just the nature of water, the way the Lord made it. The wet sand soaks the clay of the outer pot, and the water seeps slowly right through the clay to the outside. And there, on the outer surface, the moving air dries it off, and every bit that dries away pulls heat out of the pot with it. Out of the clay, out of the sand, out of the inner pot, out of your milk. The inside of that pot will settle 10, 12, 15 degrees below the temperature of the air around it, right down into the 50s on a warm day, and it will hold there as long as the sand stays wet and the air keeps moving. The engineers who study such things have a name for this. They call it a zier, a pot-in-pot cooler, and I am told that in the hot, dry lands of Africa, the farmers have kept their food this way since before anyone was writing anything down, and a man over there won a great prize some years back for reminding the world of it. We did not need the prize. We never stopped. And I do not bother myself with the long words. I just know that wet clay and moving air runs cool, and it has run cool for every grandmother who ever set a crock in the shade. Now, maybe you cannot lay your hands on 2 pots this weekend. or maybe you have no room for a big one. Do not let that stop you, because there is a simpler version of the very same idea, and it is the one my mother used most days. You take one unglazed clay pot or crock, you set your covered jar of milk down inside it, and you drape a clean cotton cloth right over the whole thing so that the cloth hangs down and its bottom edge sits in a shallow dish of water, a pie plate, or a saucer set underneath. The cloth drinks the water up out of the dish the way a lamp wick drinks oil, and it stays wet all the day long without you tending it. And the air moving past that wet cloth dries it and cools everything underneath. It is the pot in pot's little sister, and it works on the same evaporation, and it costs you a cloth and a saucer and nothing more. My mother kept a crock dressed in a wet cloth on the cool north sill of the summer kitchen every single day from May to September, and I never once in my childhood tasted a glass of sour milk. And here is a thing worth knowing, because that cool pot is too good to waste on milk alone. Whatever you can fit down beside the jar, it will keep. A crock of fresh butter stays firm and sweet in it instead of going to oil on the counter. Eggs keep for weeks down in the cool, and we have always kept ours in the cellar this way, unwashed, because the shell has its own protection. The Lord put on it, and washing takes it off. A bowl of greens or berries from the garden holds crisp 2 or 3 days longer than it has any right to. A jug of cream sits cool until wash day when I churn it. One pot, a whole little larder, running on nothing but water and the moving air. My grandmother, who came down through the Yoder line, kept a great earthen crock lowered on a rope right down into the cool of the well itself, hung just above the water where the air off it is coldest, and she drew it up by the rope of a morning with the milk in it colder than any porch would give her. If you have an old dug well with good clean sides, that is the coldest larder of all, and it costs you a length of rope. Now I have to be honest with you, because I would rather you trust me than be dazzled by me, and there are folks who will oversell you a thing like this. This is not a refrigerator. It will not get your milk down to 38 degrees, and it will not freeze your cream, and if you are looking to keep a week's worth of meat, this is not your answer. What it does is hold milk and butter and eggs and greens down in the cool 50s, which is plenty to keep them for days when they would otherwise spoil in an afternoon. And there is one more honest thing you must know. This cooling leans on dry air. Out in the dry country, in the high plains in the west, the air is thirsty, and it pulls the water off that clay fast and hard, and you will get a deep, satisfying chill, 15 degrees or more below the air. Here in the damp east, and worse down along the humid south, the air is already half full of water on a muggy day and cannot take as much off the clay, so the cooling is gentler. That is why I lean on the other two things right along with the pot. The scalding, which does its work in any climate, and the coolest, shadiest, most moving air spot I can find, a cellar, a north wall, a breezeway. Put them together, and even in a Pennsylvania August, I get my week. And one more word, plainly. Milk is a food that must be kept clean, and I am a farm woman, not a doctor. If your milk comes from the store already pasteurized, this will keep it cool just the same. If it comes fresh from a cow, keep everything scrupulously clean and trust your own nose, because your nose has kept your people alive for 10,000 years. When in doubt, do not serve it. Your own good sense is part of the method. Now think for a minute about who profits when you believe that milk cannot be kept without a machine that runs on electricity every hour of every day. The power company profits because that box in your kitchen is the single hungriest thing you own, running day and night, summer and winter, whether you are home or not. The company that built the box profits because it is a machine full of pumps and coils and a motor, and machines wear out, and in 10 or 15 years a part fails, and it is cheaper to haul the whole thing to the curb and buy a new one than to mend it. And the folks who sell you the milk profit too, in their way, because a people who cannot keep food without a machine is a people who must buy small and buy often and stay close to the store. I am not going to tell you there was a meeting somewhere where wicked men decided to make you forget the clay pot. I do not believe in that sort of thing. It is something quieter than that, and in a way, something worse. It is that everyone who makes a living from your dependence has no reason at all to remind you of the pot, and every reason to stay silent. And so for 100 years they have simply stayed silent, and the knowing slipped out of most families in a generation or two. Nobody hid it. Nobody had to. They just never mentioned it, and a thing unmentioned is soon a thing forgotten. We did not forget, because we were not permitted the machine, and so we could not afford to lose what our grandmothers knew. And I will tell you, there is a peace in it that I would not trade. When the great storm came through 2 winters ago, and the wires were down for 9 days, and I heard later that all up and down the English roads folks were throwing out ice boxes full of spoiled food and standing in long lines for a bag of ice. My milk was cool in its pot in the cellar, and my butter was firm, and my family ate the same on the 9th day as on the 1st. Our bishop is an old man, and he says a thing I have carried with me all my life. He says a family that can feed itself when the lights go out is a family that is free, and a family that cannot is only ever borrowing its next meal from someone it has never met. I think of that every time I lift the saucer off that pot and feel the cool rise off it. So this weekend, here is what I want you to do. Go and get 2 plain unglazed terracotta pots, a big one and a smaller one that sits inside it with a gap of 2 fingers all around and a bag of sand and a cork for the holes. Under $20, all of it. Plug the holes. Set the small pot inside the big one on a bed of sand, fill the gap with sand, and soak that sand with water until the clay will not drink another drop. Scald your milk, cool it quick, and pour it into a clean covered jar. Set the jar down in the inner pot, lay a wet cloth and a saucer over the top, and tuck the whole thing into the shadiest, airiest corner you have, well out of the sun. Wet the sand and the cloth morning and night. That is all. Within a day, you will lift that saucer and feel the cool come off it like the breath of a cellar, and your milk will be sweet on the 5th day and the 6th, and you will wonder, as I did the first time my mother showed me, how a thing so simple was ever allowed to be forgotten. Tell me in the comments below where you live and how hot and how damp your summers get, because that changes everything about how deep a chill you will get, and I want to hear how it goes for you. If you are out in the dry country, tell me how cold your pot runs. If you are down in the humid south, tell me too, because I have promised you it will be gentler there, and I want to know what you find. I read every single one of these. The folks in my community have always known this. I am setting it down for the folks outside it who were simply never told. Next time, I am going to show you how my grandmother kept butter firm and sweet and standing right out on the table through the hottest weeks of summer, with nothing but a bowl, a shallow dish of water, and one thing drawn up from the well, a trick so old it has no name anymore, and better than anything you can buy. Until then, keep your milk in the shade, keep the clay wet, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.